The first time Silas saw the beetle, it wasn't crawling, it oozed across the brittle, nightmare-filled pages of diverse mysteries in Professor Elias Thorne's rotting library. The thing moved like thick oil. Its shell wasn't just gold, it glowed with a wet, living light, like hot metal poured over black glass, catching the jumpy flame of the gas lamp. Outside, a nor'easter howled against the salt-crusted windows of Thorne's decaying cottage on lonely Blackwater Island. Thorne, once Silas's sharp professor at Miskatonic University, now just a thin ghost of that man, snatched the creature. His fingers were stained blue-black from old ink and pure need. "Silas," he rasped, his voice like dry sticks scraping rock. His eyes, sunk deep in his skull, burned with a fever that wasn't sickness. They locked onto Silas. Fate sent this scarab. And this, he shoved a scrap of old paper at Silas. It felt wrong, cold and damp, brittle, stinking of salt marsh, and something metallic, like old blood. Thorne didn't promise pirate gold, he promised proof. Proof of his wild theory about Captain Kidd's real cargo, the one that got him laughed out of Arkham, a madman. Later, Silas wished the storm's roar had drowned out those words. He wished he'd swum back to the mainland right then. Thorne had always been odd, but the beetle, he called it Aurum, pushed him over the edge. He kept it in a velvet box, whispering to it deep in the night. Silas heard the muffled sounds through his thick oak door, and they made his skin crawl. Jeremiah, the huge, quiet man whose family had served the Thorns forever, watched it all. His usual calm broke one rainy afternoon. As they fixed a leak, rain hammered the roof. "That bug, Mr. Silas," Jeremiah murmured, his deep voice almost lost in the downpour. "It got bad eyes, wrong eyes. Professor, he ain't sleeping. He draw in circles on the floor, muttering words that taste like rot, talking about bones whispering in the marsh, about debts coming due." Jeremiah's knuckles were white on his hammer. Something woke up out there. The scrap of paper became Thorne's whole world. He hunched over his desk like a hungry bird, eating the fragment, pouring nasty chemicals over it that stung their eyes. Finally, under the cold, white light of a full moon through the dirty library window, he showed Silas. It wasn't a map. It was a code filled with crawling symbols. A skull whose empty eyes seemed to follow you. A goat's head twisted in pain, and sharp, ugly writing like something from a tomb older than time. "Kid wasn't just a thief, Silas," Thorne said, his voice shaking between winning and pure fear. He tapped the paper with a bony finger. "He dealt in things older and darker than Spanish gold. This isn't treasure. It's a bill, a receipt, and what he got paid wasn't from this earth." His reading was scarily exact. It pointed to a place under a dead, lightning-blasted oak on the island's lonely north shore, called the Whaling Point. The instructions were sickly clear. Through the left eye of the witness, cast the key upon the appointed ground, 50 paces east-northeast, where the earth hungers. Aurum, Thorne insisted, shaking as he held the beetle's box, was the key. The witness froze Silas's blood. A skull nailed high in the tree. Jeremiah had told old pirate tales about markers. This felt worse. Jeremiah's face turned grey when Thorne ordered him to climb. The storm had passed, leaving Blackwater Island wrapped in a wet, heavy quiet, thicker than the marsh fog. The air tasted of salt, rot, and something else, sharp like after lightning, but colder. Jeremiah, carrying picks and shovels like they were for a funeral, took the small box tied to string. He climbed the huge oak, its bark like burnt scales in Silas's flashlight beam. High up, his voice drifted down, tight with fear. "Got it, Professor. Skull nailed through the head. Ain't right looking." Thorne, buzzing with crazy energy, pointed a shaking hand. "The left eye, Jeremiah. Drop the key through the left eye. Get it right." The thick darkness tricked him. Jeremiah fumbled. In the shifting shadows, he got left mixed up with right. Aurum fell from the box, landing with a soft, ugly thump in the dirt. Thorne's scream wasn't human. It sounded like his soul was ripping. "Fool, idiot." Spit flew from his lips. He grabbed the paper, counting fast, scratching numbers in the dirt, his hands shaking hard. "The key makes the ground holy. We insulted it, angered the keepers." He pointed west. "Dig here, now." They dug. The earth was cold and heavy, sticking like wet clay, breathing out a smell of deep rot that choked them. Jeremiah swung his pickaxe with heavy, steady hits. Sweat soaked his shirt. Silas dug beside him, every shovelful feeling like a sin. The quiet wasn't empty. It pushed down on them, broken only by their rough breathing, the scrape of metal, and the wet suck of mud. Then, Silas's spade hit something hard, not wood, but cold, heavy metal, an iron ring, crusted with rust and something dark and stringy, like old roots soaked in blood. Fear fought with a sick need to know. They cleared the dirt, showing not a chest, but a long iron box, longer than a man, held by thick, black straps. It looked less like treasure and more like a coffin made in hell. Cut into the rough lid was the same twisted goat head from the paper. No locks, just heavy iron latches sealed shut with thick, cracked lead seals. Each seal had the skull symbol stamped on it. Thorn broke the seals with a crowbar, breathing fast, his breath fogging the cold air. Proof, Silas, proof of the deal. Kid didn't bury his loot, he buried the payment. The price for his help. The last seal snapped like a breaking bone. The lid shifted with a groan that seemed to come from deep underground. Jeremiah and Silas, muscles straining, heaved it open. Their flashlight beams cut into the darkness inside. No coins, no jewels, bones, dozens, small, fragile, children's bones. They were broken, jumbled, some with deep cuts that spoke of terrible violence. Mixed with the pale pieces were ugly clay figures, twisted shapes that seemed to move in the flashlight beam, showing things that shouldn't exist, and bottles. Many thick, green glass bottles, corked with crumbling black wax, filled with a dark, sticky liquid that shone like old blood mixed with machine oil. The smell that hit them was like a punch of rotting meat, wet earth, and under it, a thick, sickly sweet smell, like bad honey. It coated their tongues, filled their lungs. Jeremiah stumbled back like he'd been hit, crossing himself fast, a low groan coming from him. Sweet Jesus, Lord have mercy, what devil's work is this? Thorn, though, leaned over the open box, his face blank. Horror fought with a scary, growing awe. Not treasure, he breathed, his voice quiet, but sharp in the silence. A holy box. Kid wasn't paid in gold. He was paid for bringing this. The cargo, the offering, the thing that holds the door open. His shaking hand reached towards one dark bottle. Elias, no. Silas slammed the lid shut with a crash that echoed over the empty point. The iron rang. This is evil. This is proof of killing, sacrifice. We must get Sheriff Dawson, now. Thorn spun on him. The weak teacher was gone. Something wild looked out of his eyes, blazing with that same awful light. Fool. Don't you see? They'll hide it. Bury the truth deeper than this box. This, he waved wildly at the strong box, is power. The key to knowing what walks the edge of our world. Why fish die strange in the bay. Why the marsh lights move wrong. This thing holds the door open. Spit flew from his lips. A skittering sound froze them. Aurum, the golden beetle, forgotten in the mud near the hole, was moving, not lost. With scary purpose, it crawled from the dug-up dirt, straight for the closed iron box. Its gold shell pulsed with a weak, sick light, like a dying heartbeat. It reached the cold iron and started to climb, its tiny legs tapping a fast, eager beat right towards the cut goat's head. Then, the whispers started, not from Thorn, not from Jeremiah, a rustling whisper, like a million dry insect wings, like dead leaves dragged over stone, mixed with faint, many voices, dozens, hundreds. They rose from the dug-up dirt, from the twisted roots of the dead oak, from the cold iron itself. No words Silas knew, a mess of sighs, wet clicks, choked cries, and rough sounds that went past the ears and drilled straight into his mind. They didn't promise anything, they just were, and their being there felt like a crime. Jeremiah dropped to his knees, clamping big hands over his ears, rocking hard. Day here, oh Lord Jesus, day here, day hungry. Thorn stood frozen, a wide, scary smile spreading over his thin face as he tilted his head, listening hard. Yes, he breathed, pure joy in the word. Yes, we hear you, we know. Pure, I scold. Panic grabbed Silas. This wasn't just a bad mistake, it was a doorway to hell opening. He grabbed Jeremiah's huge arm, pulling with all his might. Run, Jeremiah, for God's sake, run. They fell, scrambled away from the hole, from the open grave of horrors, from Elias Thorn, who stood like a ruined sunt before the iron box, lit by the harsh flashlight beams and the sick, pulsing light from the beetle now sitting on the goat's head. The whispers got louder, swirling around them like a cloud of invisible bugs, scratching at their minds as they crashed through the thorny bushes, running for the weak yellow light of the cottage far off. The whole island felt alive and hateful. They didn't stop running until they reached the shaky mainland dock at Sparrow's Point hours later, hearts pounding, lungs burning. They babbled about a problem, a grave found, Thorn acting crazy. Something unholy. Sheriff Dawson, a thick-necked man who thought Thorn was nuts, but harmless, took a boat back at dawn with 2 deputies, their faces full of doubt. They found the hole. The strongbox lay open, empty. Not a bone chip, not a piece of clay, not a drop of the sticky stuff left. Just cold, wet dirt, smelling faintly of that sweet rot and rust of Professor Elias Thorn. There was no sign, no footprints led away. It was like the marsh mud had opened and swallowed him and Aurum, the golden beetle, gone. The sheriff's report said Thorn was missing, probably drowned in the Blackwater marshes during a crazy spell. The problem was blamed on Jeremiah being scared, maybe hearing too many ghost stories. The grave was called, likely an old animal hole or pirate trash pit. Case closed. Dawson even patted Jeremiah on the shoulder, telling him to forget about it. But Jeremiah doesn't go near the North Shore anymore. And sometimes, on those dead still nights, when the marsh fog rolls thick over Blackwater Island, sliding like a ghost towards Sparrow's Point, if you stand near the crumbled ruins of the old Besser place, close to that dead lightning oak on Whaling Point, and you listen, past the crickets and the water, you hear them, not the wind, not the frogs. A dry, skittering whisper, like countless hard-shelled legs tapping on cold iron, and under it, faint but clear, the crazy, steady echo of a voice Silas knew too well, humming a broken tune that sounds a lot like 15 men on a dead man's chest. And if you're stupid enough to walk that lonely path by moonlight, pulled by dark curiosity or the cursed call of hidden things, you might just see something, deep in the shadow under the oak's dead branch, where the skull once hung, to faint points of light, watching and the color of old gold, pulsing softly in the black dark, waiting, listening, hungry for the next fool who thinks they're digging for gold.